is this brief, mortal life, if not the pursuit of legacy?
Hey guys, it's Mike, and I am here once again with an episode of Green and Black to discuss the second episode, House of the Dragon, which is called The Rogue Prince. And so let's get into it. Let's talk about what happened in this episode. This one takes place 6 months after the events in the first episode. I think we're going to wind up seeing a lot of these time jumps, and things are going to move forward pretty quickly. At some point, we're going to see some of the two specifically of the actors being replaced. We're going to see, Emilia Clarke, who plays Rhaenyra. She's going to be replaced, and Emily Carey, who plays Alicent, are going to be replaced with older actors. Everybody else, I think, is going to pretty much stay the same. So get used to these time jumps. So in this 6 months, a few things have happened. One is that pirates have started really stepping up their game in the Stepstones, and they have attacked the shipping lanes, and they have attacked one of Corlys Valerian's ships, and he, is obviously upset about that and is going to demand of the king that they do something about it. Leading that group of pirates is a man named Craegus Crabfeeder, who, as his name suggests, he captures his enemies, especially Valerian soldiers, and stakes them out on the beach where crabs can come and eat them alive. So Corlys is very unhappy with the king and thinks the king is being weak and allowing this kind of thing to happen. Daemon has been banished from King's Landing, and so he has seized Dragonstone, which is the ancestral home of the Targaryens. He has taken the City Watch, which he built up, and has fortified it. So he has his own little fiefdom going on out there, and that's another thing that's making the king seem weak. Also, apparently a member of the King's Guard has died, and we need a new member of the King's Guard. So in Game of Thrones, the King's Guard exists in Game of Thrones, but it is a very weakened version of the King's Guard. In fact, the last probably great soldier, last great member of the King's Guard, Sir Barristan Selmy, who dies during the show, he even mocks the members of the King's Guard. But this is the King's Guard at its height. This is a very elite force that is tasked with protecting the king, and so it's a pretty serious thing to pick a new member of the King's Guard. And the king has decided to allow his daughter to do it, possibly because she has stepped out during one of the small council meetings and made a suggestion about using dragons to deal with the pirates. And maybe as a way to appease her, maybe as a way to give her something to do that he doesn't seem to be thinking is as important. The king assigns her to this task to decide who is going to be the new member of the King's Guard. So she goes off with Sir Harold, and Sir Harold has prepared a list of appropriate knights for her to select from. Obviously, he is looking, as is Otto Hightower, they're looking for someone who can help to build alliances in the kingdom. She's not interested in that. She is interested in finding the best soldier to protect her father. And so she comes in and interviews Sir Criston Cole, who, I don't know if you noticed this, but when all those knights are standing around in the room which will eventually become the map room, but the room where they're having the selection process, all the other knights have squires except for Criston Cole. But she asks who has actual combat experience, and he is the only one who has actual combat experience, having fought alongside Lord Dondarrion. So she decides that he's going to be the new member of the King's Guard. Otto Hightower, the Hand of the King, doesn't like this. He tries to talk her out of it, but she's not having any of it. She basically kind of puts him in a corner and says, well, shouldn't the best one be the one protecting the king? And obviously he has no answer for that. So, Rhaenyra is kind of feeling herself out a little bit, and as we see, she's going to continue to do this. and she's going to continue to kind of find herself in this. The other obvious problem is that the king is not doing much. He is not doing much to appease Lord Corlys, who has lost a ship. In fact, Corlys is like, literally screams out, "This is an absurdity," when the king refuses to act harshly, and that's a bold point to make in a small council. There's definitely going to be some issues going on there as we move forward between the sea snake and the king, and who's going to come down on what side, or how is the king going to be able to get Corlys back onto his side. So that's obviously going to be a problem. And then the big thing becomes obviously at the end, which is when they feel the need to face off on Daemon because he has stolen a dragon egg from the palace. And so the king sends Otto Hightower and the King's Guard to Dragonstone to retrieve the egg. There's a confrontation on the bridge, the famous bridge which we saw in Game of Thrones. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And when it looks like it's going to come to a battle and Otto is well outmatched, Rhaenyra shows up on her dragon and she negotiates, so to speak, a truce, and she gets the egg back from her uncle. But there's definitely a tense conversation there. He kind of offhandedly tosses her the egg, and it seems that Daemon and Rhaenyra have come to some kind of understanding, and they're not going to be the rivals or the enemies that maybe one might think. And we're certainly going to see that kind of come to fruition in a bit towards the end of the episode. The other big thing that's happening is that there's a lot of pressure on the king to remarry and to strengthen his line. Now, he has named an heir in his daughter. Obviously, that is going to not sit very well with people. But also, it's one heir. And if she should, fall off her dragon, then there's going to be another crisis. So even if it's a second in line, third in line, fourth in line, the people would be demanding that the king have more heirs. And so there is mounting pressure on him to remarry, even though it's only been 6 months since the death of Aemma. So he is presented with some options. The most likely political option is the daughter of Corlys and Rhaenys, who is the Lady Laena, who is 12 years old. And there's a really disturbing, in a way that is a lot even for Game of Thrones, scene where the king and Laena are walking through the garden, and she seems to be trying to court him and trying to woo him. It's really something. But he makes the decision at the end that he is going to marry Alicent, which is a surprise to his daughter. It is a surprise to everybody. It's not going to be well received by anybody except for Otto. And you can already see the line starting to draw, because obviously Otto Hightower is trying to strengthen the position of his house, is trying to gain position, is trying to gain a foothold into the throne. He's obviously sent his daughter to make the king fall in love with her, so to speak, and it seems that the king has, because Alicent is a sweet girl and she does truly care about the king. Even though it's not politically the most astute move, it's what he's decided to do. But you can see where the lines are going to start to be drawn, because Rhaenyra is the heir apparent. She is the heir, the heir presumptive. She's the one who's been chosen. However, if Alicent gives the king a male heir, that's going to create some issues, and people are going to demand that the male heir is going to be the one who takes the throne. And so you can start to see the lines being drawn with, the Hightowers on one side, Rhaenyra on the other side, and who is going to fall in behind her. This show is going to be completely about political intrigue, about drama. I think I saw something where there is, in the first season, there's 70 pages of dialogue that comes out of the small council chamber, which is over an hour. that's a lot of people sitting around a table talking. But this is really some of the most compelling stuff in the show, and this is really, I think, what a lot of this show is going to be about. It's going to be as much people sitting around talking as it's going to be swords and dragons, I think. Which is interesting. It's a little bit of a switch from Game of Thrones, but I think it's going to be an interesting one. You know, if you look at the way that they designed the show and the way they set this up, so you have two things going on, and this is kind of a little inside baseball. They built this huge set of the Red Keep, and it's a continuous set. It's a combined set, which means that in the space of the set, you can go from the gate, the main hall, the staircase, up into the small council chamber, up into the king's chamber, into Rhaenyra's chamber. It's all one big space, and they built it with the idea that they can shoot it from multiple spots in multiple directions. You know, we've seen that, you know, in the small council chamber, there's like these side galleries, and there's these, you know, where Daemon was spying on them. We've seen in the main courtyard where there's these balconies where Princess Rhaenys was watching what was going on. So there's all kinds of different angles and spots and corners and stuff that they can shoot from. But they have also built a volume, and what a volume is, for those of you who don't know, it's basically a virtual set. So they have this huge space that's covered in like 20,000 LED screens, and it's all run through Unreal Engine, which is a game engine. This is the technology they use on The Mandalorian and on the Book of Boba Fett. And so basically what happens is they design these 3D virtual worlds, and then all that is tied into the position of the camera, and there's 90 cameras around that are monitoring the position of the actors, the position of the main camera, and it's rendering the environment in real time in such a way that it's always in proper perspective to the camera. So if you were standing on the side of the set and watching it, it would be all weird and distorted. But if you look through the camera, everything looks perfect, and everything looks like you are in that particular spot looking at something. So for instance, in this bridge scene, all that was there, the only thing that was there was the bridge. But instead of shooting it on a green screen where actors have to imagine what's going on, they have it all projected around them. And so, for instance, you know, the sunlight is correct, and when, you know, if there's lights that happen, you know, fire or whatever, it actually shows up on the set, and it's actually properly reflected, and they don't have to go in with VFX and try to do it later. So it's really amazing technology, and they are using it. So basically, that's most of the show, is either the King's Landing, either the Red Keep set or the volume. They do some live stuff. They did do a location shoot for the beach scene. But for the most part, this is really kind of contained, and they can spend a lot of time and a lot of effort. And don't forget, a lot of this was shot under COVID protocol, so there wasn't going to be a lot of traveling anyway. They are really focused on the set design and really focused on immersing us in this world. And I'm really looking forward to what's going on with this. So that's it, kind of in a nutshell. I'm working on getting a guest on next week to talk about where we're at after the third episode and get some kind of reactions and really start talking about where this is kind of sitting in the zeitgeist and how we kind of feel about all this stuff. So we'll talk to you next week, and thanks for listening. Have a good week.